Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that President Lincoln believed slavery was morally wrong and worked to end it permanently through a constitutional amendment? Learn how more than 4 million people were enslaved when the American Civil War began, and how ultimately the 13th Amendment officially ended slavery everywhere in the United States.
4 million people.
Yeah, it's a staggering number.
It really is. I want you to step back with us to the year 1861 and just try to wrap your mind around that number for a second.
Right.
The American Civil War has just begun, and across 15 southern and border states, more than 4 million people are being held as slaves.
And nearly all of them are of African descent.
Exactly. So today, we are taking a profound look at the timeline, the actual text, and, well, the immense human impact of the 13th Amendment.
Which is such an important topic.
It is. But beyond just the historical mechanics of it, our mission for this deep dive is to explore the deeper philosophical meaning of freedom itself.
Because we are looking at a system that held millions in physical and legal bondage, and we are tracing the deliberate steps taken to dismantle it.
Right.
President Abraham Lincoln believed, and he stated this as a matter of absolute moral fact, that slavery was an evil.
Yes, an absolute evil.
Exactly. So we are walking through the precise mechanisms of how a nation fundamentally rewrites its core operating system to eradicate that evil.
And to really understand the 13th Amendment, we first have to understand the initial incredibly limited steps that preceded it.
Right, because it wasn't just one magic document.
No, not at all. Lincoln realized early on that a massive structural change to a country doesn't happen overnight. It's a process.
It is, and the timeline of this systemic dismantling begins in earnest on April 16th, 1862.
Okay.
On that day, President Lincoln signed a piece of legislation that abolished slavery, but specifically and only in the District of Columbia.
Right, just the nation's capital.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I mean, that makes sense mechanically, right? Because Congress directly governs the District of Columbia.
Precisely.
So they didn't need to navigate individual state laws to make that change. But then we jump forward to a date most people immediately recognize.
January 1st, 1863.
Yes, the issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure.
Because if Lincoln believed slavery was a moral evil, why did the Emancipation Proclamation only free slaves in the states that were actively rebelling?
It's a great question.
Like, it feels hypocritical, or at best like a localized Band-Aid,
What's fascinating here is the sheer constitutional tightrope Lincoln was walking at the time.
because of the limits of his power.
Exactly. It looks contradictory on the surface, but we really have to look at the mechanisms of presidential power in 1863.
Right.
Lincoln did not have the constitutional authority to just unilaterally outlaw slavery across the entire country.
They couldn't just sign a paper and make it go away everywhere.
No, he couldn't. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued under his authority as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it was a military action.
It was legally framed entirely as a military measure. He was stripping the Confederacy of the enslaved workforce that was sustaining their rebellion.
So he could only apply it to the Confederate States because he was using war powers to seize what the law tragically considered the resources of the enemy.
Yes, exactly. That is the tragic legal reality of the time.
That is so wild to think about.
And Lincoln deeply understood how fundamentally fragile that made the proclamation.
Because it was only tied to the war.
Right. He knew that because it was a wartime measure, the very second the war ended, the legal foundation for that freedom could just evaporate.
The courts could just overturn it completely.
They could. The nation would absolutely need a permanent constitutional amendment to truly abolish slavery, and he took a highly active role in making that happen before the war concluded.
Because, recognizing that you need an amendment is the easy part.
Oh, yeah. The idea is easy.
Actually forcing one through a deeply divided government is an entirely different story. Changing the Constitution isn't just flipping a switch.
Not at all.
It's like trying to rewrite the foundational code of a software program while the computer is actively running.
That's a really good way to put it.
You have to get the developers, Congress, to write the new code, and then get the users, which are the states, to actually install the update.
Exactly, which brings us to the actual legislative timeline.
Right, and the massive gap between the different branches of government.
The momentum required to push this through is staggering when you look at the dates. It really is.
So the U.S. Senate passed the 13th Amendment on April 8, 1864.
Correct.
But then the House of Representatives didn't pass until January 31st, 1865.
Yeah, the delay was massive.
That is almost 10 full months of legislative gridlock. Why did it take the House so much longer?
Well, the mechanics of the House of Representatives created a massive hurdle. Passing a constitutional amendment requires a two-thirds majority.
Right, which is tough to get.
Very tough. While the Senate had the votes relatively early, the House was intensely divided.
Who was blocking it?
You had conservative representatives, border state unionists, and outright opponents who fiercely resisted the measure.
So it was just a total roadblock.
It was. To get that two-thirds majority, Lincoln and his allies had to engage in some brutal political maneuvering.
Like what?
They had to sway lame duck congressmen, promise patronage jobs, and exert immense executive pressure. It was a grinding 10-month battle of political attrition just to get the words out of Congress.
And when it finally cleared the House, Lincoln signed it the very next day, on February 1st, 1865.
He did.
But even then, going back to my analogy, the software update isn't installed yet, right?
Exactly. The ratification process is the final crucial step.
Right.
It had to be voted on and accepted by 3/4 of the individual state legislatures.
And when did that happen?
That final threshold, the moment it actually became binding constitutional law across the entire nation, was not reached until December 6, 1865.
December 6, 1865.
Yeah.
I want to pause and let the historical weight of that timeline sink in for you listening right now.
It's heavy.
It really is. Because there is a profound tragedy embedded in those dates.
President Lincoln, the man who actively championed this amendment, never lived to see it ratified by the Starts.
He was assassinated on April 14th, 1865.
Yes, he died months before the nation finally crossed the finish line.
It's just heartbreaking when you look at the timeline.
It is a massive historical tragedy.
So the legal battle was finally won on paper in late 1865. The code was rewritten.
The update was installed.
Right. But what did those words actually say? And how do they instantly change the reality for millions of people who had been, legally treated as property?
We should look at the text.
Let's read the exact text.
It is a remarkably brief sentence to undo centuries of systemic bondage.
It really is short. The 13th Amendment states exactly this, quote, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, whereof the part shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction."
And right there.
Wait, let's look at that text for a second. Except as punishment for crime.
Yes.
That feels like a massive backdoor left wide open in the middle of this triumphant document.
It was an enormous vulnerability. And this is vital to understanding the full picture of 1865.
How so?
The moment the 13th Amendment was passed, that specific loophole, allowing involuntary servitude as a punishment for a crime, created a new legal reality.
Okay.
It meant that if you could legally convict someone of an offense, you could essentially force them back into unpaid labor.
Oh, wow. So they just changed the label?
Exactly. In the immediate aftermath, Southern states actively exploited this.
I can imagine.
They passed harsh local laws, often targeting newly freed African Americans for incredibly minor infractions like vagrancy.
Just for being unemployed or walking around.
Basically, yes. Just to arrest them and lease their labor out. The legal architecture of freedom was established, but it was immediately tested and manipulated.
So the physical chains were broken, but the legal structure of the country still needed tremendous work to actually protect people.
That's exactly right.
Which is why it ultimately took 3 total Civil War amendments to secure those protections.
The 14th and 15th Amendments were absolutely essential follow-ups.
But despite that loophole, the immediate human aftermath of those words becoming law is incredibly moving.
It is. You immediately saw a massive wave of human connection.
Families trying to find each other.
Yes, African Americans began desperately searching for family members who had been separated from them by the institution of slavery.
Which had to be nearly impossible.
You have to understand the mechanics of the search. There was no internet, no federal database.
Right.
People relied on word of mouth. They placed inquiries anywhere they could, and many simply walked hundreds of miles across states.
Just walking.
Just walking, tracing the rumors of where a spouse or a child might have been sold years earlier.
That is, the resilience there is just unbelievable.
It's a testament to the power of family.
And when they found each other, or even if they were already together, they rushed to formalize their bonds.
Yes, many Black citizens were finally able to legally marry.
Because under slavery, A marriage wasn't legally recognized at all.
No, it wasn't.
A family could be torn apart at the financial whim of a master. So securing a legal marriage was about securing the protection of the law over your own family.
It was the legal recognition of their humanity.
Yeah.
And alongside reuniting and marrying, they began raising families with a completely different horizon of possibility.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, I love this part.
Alongside all of this, many former slaves did something incredibly powerful. They gave themselves new names.
Yes.
They specifically chose new names to distinguish themselves from their former masters.
Which is so significant.
If you think about it, choosing your own name is the ultimate act of self-determination.
It really is.
It's like taking back ownership of your own identity. You are literally rewriting the title deed to yourself.
I love that framing.
You are putting the world on notice, saying, I do not belong to the person whose name was forced upon me. I belong to me.
Taking a new name is a profound declaration of agency.
Absolutely.
And that concept of agency brings us directly to the philosophy underpinning this entire era.
Because it wasn't just a legal change.
Right. Breaking the physical chains and rewriting the Constitution is one half of the equation.
Yeah.
To truly grasp the weight of this, we have to look at the intellectual and spiritual philosophy of freedom from the people who actually lived it.
Exactly. The source material provides these incredible quotes that drill down into what freedom actually means on a human level.
Let's hear them.
We are going to look at Lincoln, Booker T. Washington, and Frederick Douglass. Let's start with Lincoln, who said, "Slavery is founded in the selfishness of man's nature. Opposition to it is his love of justice."
That's powerful.
And he also noted, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves."
See, Lincoln is establishing freedom not just as a political right, but as a fundamental test of human empathy.
Right.
He is framing the entire conflict as a battle between ultimate selfishness and ultimate justice.
And then we have this brilliant insight from Booker T. Washington, who was himself born to slavery.
Yes.
He said, "You can't hold a man down without staying down with him."
That is such a profound observation.
I want you to visualize the physical mechanics of that. It is such a visceral, physical analogy.
It really paints a picture.
If you are physically pinning someone to the dirt, you literally have to restrict your own movement to do it.
You're stuck there too.
Exactly. You have to stay on your knees in the mud, holding them there with both hands. Your entire focus is consumed by keeping them subjugated.
You can't do anything else.
Oppression is a trap for the oppressor, too. You forfeit your own upward mobility because you're so dedicated to holding someone else down.
And that trap was economic and societal as well as moral.
Right. It held the whole South back.
The Southern economy and society were fundamentally stunted because their entire system relied on holding millions of people in the mud.
Yeah.
The machinery of oppression degrades the humanity and the progress of everyone involved in it.
It's a poison.
Which leads perfectly into the insight from Frederick Douglass, another incredible voice who endured and escaped slavery.
What did he say?
He said, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave."
I love that quote because the word unfit implies that the system of slavery requires a specific kind of manufactured ignorance to function.
Yes, manufactured ignorance is exactly it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see exactly how intellectual awakening destroys the mechanics of subjugation.
How so?
Slavery relies on the enslaved person being treated, both legally and psychologically, as an object.
Right.
But knowledge, learning to read, understanding the broader context of the world, recognizing your own inherent rights, shifts a person's mind from an object to a subject.
You become a person with agency.
Once you possess knowledge, your internal reality fundamentally rejects the external condition of bondage.
It just doesn't compute anymore.
You become structurally incompatible with the institution. You break the psychological chains long before the legal ones are severed.
The moment you introduce knowledge into that system, the gears grind to a halt.
They absolutely do.
Which brings us to the deepest foundation of this entire discussion.
Our source material points to a perspective that frames this entire history around the concept of moral agency.
Yes, this is key.
The Book of Moses states, "Thou mayest choose for thyself, for it is given unto thee."
It's stated as a literal fact.
Exactly. The source lays this out not as a philosophical theory, but as an absolute foundational fact of human existence.
Right.
The freedom to choose the right, the freedom to exercise your own will, is presented as the most important individual freedom a person can possess. It is a divine given.
So you can't just legislate it away.
To the people fighting this battle, the fight for freedom wasn't just a political struggle, it was a mandate to restore a fundamental human reality.
Which brings me to a question I want to ask you, the listener, directly.
It's an important question.
Why do you think it is important to choose for yourself? When you hear these voices, Lincoln talking about justice, Booker T. Washington talking about the physical trap of oppression.
Or Frederick Douglass explaining the power of knowledge.
Right. Or the ancient scriptures declaring your absolute right to choose. Which of those hits you the hardest?
What resonates with you?
Yeah. What does your freedom actually mean to you today?
Those are the questions this history demands that we ask ourselves.
So, what does this all mean? Let's bring all these threads together.
Good idea.
We started by looking at a nation torn apart in 1861 with 4 million people enslaved.
Such a dark time.
We traced the agonizingly incremental steps toward justice, from the localized freedom in Washington, D.C., through the complex constitutional tightrope of the Emancipation Proclamation.
To the grueling 10-month legislative battle to force the 13th Amendment through a divided Congress.
Right. We witnessed the ultimate triumph of ratification in December 1865, shadowed by the deep tragedy of Lincoln's assassination.
And then we saw the immediate, beautiful human response.
Yes, people walking across states to reclaim their families.
Securing the legal protection of marriage.
And rewriting their own identities by taking new names.
It's incredible.
And we explored the powerful philosophy that underpinned it all, the understanding that freedom is an intellectual and moral imperative.
Driven by knowledge and the fundamental necessity of moral agency.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, there's one final piece of this story that we need to look at closely.
This raises an important question, and it's something I want to leave you to mull over long after we sign off today.
Okay, what is it?
Think back to that specific loophole we discussed in the exact wording of the 13th Amendment.
Right.
Except as punishment for crime whereof the part shall have been duly convicted.
The back door.
We talked about how that was immediately exploited in the years following the Civil War to force newly freed people back into labor.
Yeah, with vagrancy laws and all that.
But I want you to think about the long-term mechanics of that text. What happens when you leave a loophole in the very document meant to permanently dismantle the machinery of bondage?
That is a heavy question.
How might those specific words, except as punishment for crime, have echoed through the generations that followed, shaping not just the Reconstruction era, but the modern legal and penal framework of America?
Wow. That is a heavy, essential thought to carry with you.
It really is.
Because history isn't just about what ended, it's about what was set in motion.
Absolutely.
And how the exact phrasing of our laws continues to ripple through time. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
Keep asking these hard questions, keep examining the words that shape our world, and most importantly, never stop learning.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.